We move on to the next presentation. It's by Dr. Siri Rama. It's about dancing Shaktis, depictions of the sacred and secular feminine principles through dance in Hoysala sculptures. Over to you, Dr. Rama.
Thank you so much, Shafali ji. It was a very, I would say, profound interview. There's so much to learn from a practicing artist, and I'm a dancer myself, so I can appreciate the journey too. And one point that struck me was about ornamentation. And as you're going to see in my slides that are going to come up, Hoysala art is known for its profuse ornamentation. In fact, I like the description of ornamentation which Christian used, that ornamentation is kind of an ode or an acknowledgement of the divine principles. And I hope I have slightly changed my PowerPoint listening to all the lectures that I could yesterday. And it's going to be just a very visual presentation, lot of pictures that I've taken of the Halebeedu and Belu temples, and very little words. For the paper, you can, of course, look at my paper, but just to make it interesting, I thought I'll just stick to the visuals. Now I'll share my PowerPoint. And before I share my PowerPoint, I would also like to acknowledge and thank Dr. Nagaraj ji, Shefali ji, and Hari ji for organizing this conference. And it's we very rarely get to hear this kind of thought-provoking papers put together. So I'll start mine so that others don't get delayed. Okay, there it is. So my paper is about dancing Shaktis. So the Hoysala period is known for its temples. It's, for those who don't know, it's in Karnataka, the state of Karnataka, in the Hassan district. There are temples, and I begin with an ode to Nritya Saraswati, Hamsa Vahana Mahadevi, Japamala Veenadhari, Vismayavati Leelanvite, Sarva Veda Abhayankari, Pasha Ankusha Shruva Haste, Venu Padma Phaladhari, Vande Saraswati Devi, Yoga Nrityeshwari, Namostate. So to the left, if you're facing the screen, then to the right of your screen, you see Ganapati, the Nritya Ganapati from the Hoysala temple, a beautiful sculpture. And to the right of your screen, you will see a picture of a dancing Devi. And hopefully you'll be able to guess who she is. And I'll tell you where she's located in the temple. So it is a picture of Saraswati. And here you can see her. And this is the context in which she's seen in the Halebeedu temple. So to give you a brief, during my doctoral studies, I looked at the dance sculptures, being a dancer myself, and I've been interested in the connections between, always in dance descriptions as a child and as you're training, you're told to hold sculpturous poses. But what these sculpturous poses are, very little training is given in the dance traditions. So you have to look at temples and other works of art by ancient traditions in order to understand what is meant by holding these sculpturous poses. So this is a picture of Halebeedu. Hale literally means old. Beedu is, of course, place, and it is the Shiva temple. It is a Dvikuta structure. And so you see the, one part, this is one of the side entrances. It's from one side, and the other Dvikuta, meaning two sanctums. So the one sanctum is on the side and the other sanctum is on the other side. This is the best place to get a complete picture of the temple. To the right, you see the Sukhanasi and the Mandapa and the Nritta Mandapa, and the area around the Garbhagriha is covered not with perforated jalandharas or screens, but is covered with sculptures. Very ornately carved temple ornamentation would be a good description. So a closer look at this place would be, there is the Jagati, then the Patikas, all the long rows of Gaja, Hamsa, Simha, and of course narrations of the way of life. In the Hoysala period, war is described, the epics are sculpted, and of course there are large figures. And as you go higher and higher, if you see, compare it to other Hoysala temples, in the Vimana area, there is less of sculptural work. And the idea is that you go from the Laukika to the Parama state, Paramahamsa state, where there is less figurative description, but it is more abstract. And here, of course, you can see inside the temple, one of the kutas has the Shivalinga. It's also carved very intricately inside. But Hoysaleshwara temple is under the Archaeological Society, so it's not a living temple, unlike the other temples. So here you see a more closer view of the. And I come to the other temple, which is a Vaishnava temple, Vishnu Sri Channakeshava, worshipped as a Keshava Murti. And here it's a living temple. That means for generations, the worship has continued, and the village people, the people or town people of Belur go regularly, and the temple is part of their living tradition, unlike the Hoysaleshwara temple. And in Belur, there is also a priest who for generations has been conducting this and continuing the tradition of worship there, though this temple also, the Vimana is damaged. The tower above the Garbhagriha is damaged. It's one of the conundrums of the Hoysala temple, that why the Vimanas fell. Some of course say it's because the architecture couldn't support it. Some of course say it's damaged. And there are also Sthala Puranas which talk about Indra being so jealous of the Halebeedu temple that in order to remove its beauty, he actually came down and carried away the Vimana of the temple. So even there are Dantakathas which talk about these Vimanas. So we don't know what is the truth. So the architecture is called the Vesara style, and there has been, and one of the unusual things, because this conference is on the Vishwakarma's children, Hoysala architecture in fact has inscriptions which talk about the sculptor. So there are names called Dasoja, Maboja, Ketoja, and in fact in my thesis I've actually compared the inscriptural signatures of these sculptors to the mudras of Carnatic music. What are mudras of Carnatic music? Each Carnatic musician leaves a signature in his composition, at the end of his composition. It can be anything. It can be in praise of the deity. It can be his own lineage. It can be about his guru. It can be so many things. And one can see the same tradition in the Shilpa tradition of the Hoysalas, where the Shilpins who are sign off in different ways. They, of course, mention their name. Sometimes they may not mention their name, but they may mention the guru's name, the artisan's name. They may mention the name of the deity they are attached to. So it's a very interesting comparison to see this. And of course, all this Hoysala art, the phase of Hoysala art reached its glory under this king called Vishnuvardhana. And both these temples, which stand as examples of Hoysala art, and of course there are other temples too, but these are one of the more popular temples, is attributed to Vishnuvardhana, and his this royal king is also carved on one of the Jalandharas. And the Hoysalas were known for war, so the Hoysala Simha and Gaja, the Hoysala warrior fighting, is also depicted in these. So coming to my topic, so that was just a brief glimpse. And coming to my topic, I'll come to the Shalabanjikas, or the bracket figures in these Hoysala temples. So I'll just go a little back, and the bracket figures would be under the eaves there of the main roof structure, and they kind of attract one's attention because of their beauty, their ornateness, and of course, poets like the great poet Gundappa of Devi Gundappa of Karnataka has written, poems which have been danced and sung for more than 40, 50 years in Karnataka. And this is the drum dance. So you can see that the Shalabanjikas are shown dancing and they are holding up the drum. And it's not just a repetition of one movement, but of different movements. And then, of course, the dancer, Nartaki, she's also this thing. And interestingly, this is where the idea of divine dance being attributed to Shalabanjikas come. And where I feel that the dancing Shakti became a very important part of the Hoysala philosophy and was reflected by the Shilpins of that era. Because if you see an inscription under one of the Shalabanjikas, it will say that this is a Shalabanjika done by such so-and-so sculptor. It then never mentions this is Mohini, this is Vishnu, it doesn't mention. But if you ask the living priests in the temple, he will tell you that all these Shalabanjikas are a representation of Vishnu as Mohini. In the myth, Mohini Bhasmasura, and in the temple, every April, a festival is conducted called Mohini Alankarotsava, and which coincides with the Kamana Haba, or the holy festival. And there, the Bhasmasura figure is burnt, and Vishnu, or Keshavamurti, is dressed up as Mohini, and he sways, and towards the end, Bhasmasura is burned. Of course, over the years, because the Kamana Haba, the holy festival, became more popular among people, the Mohini Alankarotsava is done, but in a very small way. This was actually told to me by the residing fourth or fifth generation Pandit in the temple. So the idea of these Shalabanjikas not merely being dancers, and in fact, this particular idol Shalabanjika, you see, they call it the Mohini. Even poets have called it that, because the hand is raised above the head, and that's the movement when Bhasmasura burns himself, when he copies Mohini's dance. So like that, there are beautiful images and of this, and so it's not that just divine images are there and divine myths are superimposed on these images, but there are also images of dancers. So there's both this supposedly secular aspect where dance among the common people are shown, and strangely the dance of the common people and that of the gods is also the same. The movements are the same. So that is also a very interesting point. So there are thousands of images like this, and each image is carved differently with some beauty attached to it, of some element that you find totally different. And this is an important image also because it has an inscription. This is again a Shalabanjika among the Mohini, so-called Mohini images at the top, bracket figures. But this Shalabanjika has a Trishula in the hand with a skull, a Danda, Trishula, and with a Kapala on that Trishula also, with a bowl. So clearly a Shaivite dancing, and often called a Durga image. And under the image, the inscription is Baligame Ruvari Dashoja Madita Shalabanjika. So it is clear that even though the Shalabanjika is holding the Trishula and is clearly a divine figure, she's still being called a Shalabandika? So these are some of the questions that need to be explored. And of course, everywhere in other parts of the temple, in small ornate carvings, you can see this dancing Devi with the Trishula being shown. And of course, I now will come to Halebeed, which was the source of, my, discovery almost of these dancing Devis. And you can see that the profusion. So when you go to the temple, there are so many images that, and if you go as a dancer, you see only the movements. If you go as a worshipper and you're not observing certain things, then you go and see all these different images of Ramayana, Mahabharata, Shiva, Vishnu. You kind of don't perceive this as, because it's part of a big ornate structure. So it's only when you start looking at it more deeply and meditate on it almost, that you start seeing this. And what I found, which I have not found in many places talked about, are the dancing Shaktis of Halebeed. And that's my main contention, that these dancing Shaktis are very beautiful and need to be highlighted. And it is interesting that in temples of Shiva and Vishnu, the Shakti is shown dancing as much or even more than Shiva or Vishnu dancing. And each time a Shakti is shown dancing, next to her consort, whether it is Brahma, Vishnu or Maheshwara, is shown in a Samapada stand or the standing posture. So it's very interesting that in the Chola architecture, we have Shiva dancing as Nataraja and Shivakama Sundari standing and watching the dance. And here in Hoysala, it is almost as if the sculptors were showing another way of looking at the universe, of Shakti dancing and Shiva in this thing. And of course, we have seen that in the Pancharatra and other philosophies also, that over a period of time, Shakti dancing or showing her, being the visible energy of the universe, became important. And maybe this was reflected. So if you see here, Saumya Durga is shown and Chamunda is shown, and she's shown dancing beautifully, not only in Halebeed, but even in the, in the corner images you'll see from other temples. And this side you will see Chamunda shown in her Ghora Rupa. And the small square image you see is that inside from Orissa, actually, from the Saptamatrika panel. So actually, Chamunda is shown biting her little finger, and in a battle rage with skeletons dancing around her is shown not only in Halebeed, but in other temples also in the Hoysala period. And this, of course, this is the image of Nritya Saraswati, and you can see the Hamsa Vahana at her feet. And every time I see these Dashabhuja Saraswatis, I start crying, especially the one on the right, to the right-hand side of the screen. The hands are all broken, and I always wish that if the figure was complete, how beautiful that Veena would have looked. And it's really sad to see. It's such a beautiful image if one sees it. And like I said, the standing Brahma and the dancing Devi, this is highlighted again and again. And I feel this importance of dancing Shakti grew, and hence in a later time, the Shalabandikas in Belur also were given this. The myth was attached to them. That's my this thing from researching and also talking to other scholars. Again, Nritya Lakshmi. How often do we see Lakshmi dancing? And if you can see, there is a seated Vishnu with Lakshmi there. And next to it is also a standing Vishnu. Again, I brought this to highlight how this is at a distance above, the head level, and you have to take your neck a little up to see these figures. and take some time to spend, to meditate or look at how these dancing Shaktis are placed. Again, why I come to these conclusions is also in the corner. If you see on the left-hand side or the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see in the corner dancing Durga, and right next to her is a standing Shiva. After one and I'm coming almost to the end of my presentation, and here you will see that just below the figure of seated Vishnu and Lakshmi, you will see a row of dancing Devis, and the most interesting one is a three-headed Devi. Whether it is a representation of Devi or whether it is a Saptamatrika panel showing three-headed Devi, I don't know. But these hidden gems are there in Hoysala, this thing and worth looking into. Again, a Devi dancing, you can see she has the Pasha and Kusha, and then the Dola Hasta, she has the Vedas in one hand. Of course, because the figures are worn out every time, it's like a mystery to solve, to figure out which Devi it is. And I end my presentation with three gods dancing Ganapati, which you see on the small projection from the turret, and dancing Shiva and dancing Devi. So all three of them are dancing. And with this, I conclude my presentation, and thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk. I hope I was not very fast, because I was just so afraid of not being able to say everything. I was so excited by the conference and everything. I know. I sometimes, Shefali-ji, you know, when you're passionate about something, you just go for it.
Your passion clearly shows, ma'am. And this presentation was actually sheer visual poetry. I don't have any other words to describe it. I was mesmerized, actually.
Yes.
By the beauty of the images. Of course, Hoysala art is my favorite too, and I've been there many times. And I write a column for on Indian temples for a Marathi newspaper in Maharashtra. Every week I write one. So in that, I think I have covered about 8 or 9 Hoysala temples, including Belur Halebit, but even the smaller temples. Including Dodda Gadavali, including Somnathpura, including
Haranhalli.
Haranhalli. Then what is that? Javagal. Then there is that name starting with Hoysala. Yes, it's an incredibly beautiful temple.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Let me just go through the questions and see if you have any questions. Mr. Dhagat said, I have been twice to this place and will visit again. In case you've written any blog or paper, I would like to go through. Can you please give me reference of the paper to read before I visit again?
Sure. Please contact.
And also this paper will be published, of course, the entire paper, so you can always read it. And once again, thank you for a very beautiful, very visually rich, very moving presentation. I think I'm going to carry these images in my mind for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All the unknown sculptors who have done this and have given us so much to... Each temple is like an Upanishad. How many ever times you read it, you learn something new. So thanks to all the unknown, unsung sculptors.
Thank you so much.